Do you see any trends within the church that have contributed to sort of, you mentioned the people that are that do excellent work across the spectrum and rise to the top? Is there ways that the church has sort of discouraged those kinds of people and perhaps
Yes.
in the name of God kept them from really excelling like they ought?
Yeah, I alluded to this a bit ago, the Protestant doctrine of vocation, which I think we absolutely must recover, because what's happened is when the Reformation hit, one of the great things that was recovered was Luther's great statement: God Himself milks the cow through the labor of the milkmaid.
Priesthood of all
The
believers.
priesthood of all believers, and Christ in the artisan, and not just Christ in the monk.
Right.
So in the previous devotional setup, if you were really sold out for Jesus, you would go into the monastery, or you would do the Navy SEALs for Jesus thing, and then you just and then the Protestant Reformation said, no, Jesus is involved in far more than what's going on in the monastery. He's involved in the vineyards and in the print shop and the hurly-burly of life. And that was a wonderful, I think, a wonderful recovery. But in modern evangelicalism, I see a distinct and noticeable drift back to the old way of thinking. So if you're really sold out for Jesus, you're going to go into quote-unquote full-time Christian work. So what does that make the printer?
Right.
What does that make the graphic designer?
Right.
What does that make well, that makes it, I'm a part-time Christian. Well, if I want to be serious so I'm a breeder and a breeder and a tither, necessary evil in the church. And if I want to be among the angels, then I've got to become a missionary or go to seminary.
Right.
And I think that that's deadly. And that has led Christians who are marking time in ordinary vocations to despise it, even if they're stuck in it. They despise it. And if they despise it, they're not going to rise to the top in it. They're not going to become the best that there is in genome sequencing or studying microbiology or plumbing or roofing or whatever. They're not going to become the best at it because, well, this world's not my home. I'm just passing through, and I've got to earn a paycheck. We all have to stay alive for some reason, and the church wants me to give a little bit, and so that's what I'm going to do. And it's a very limited horizon, and so consequently, you don't have I'm fond of saying that in Reformation era France, there was a saying among the French that as honest as a Huguenot. And the Huguenots invented the French middle class. They invented artisanship. It was the direct result of all of this. But I think we shouldn't hold our breath waiting for Americans to develop the phrase "as honest as an evangelical." And I think that there's a deep theological reason for it, and it's this sacred-secular divide that is coming back to haunt us.
Do you think that that's, getting back to some of the earlier things we talked about, is that sacred-secular divide rooted in a sort of fundamental mistake of what creation is all about and what it's for?
Yes, I think so. I think lurking behind that secular-sacred divide is probably a nature-grace dualism.
Right.
Where you like we're swimming underwater, and every Sunday we poke our heads up into the grace realm and get a lungful of air and then back down, swimming around, and that nature grace dualism, I think, is driving the secular sacred distinction, and I just don't think it's a biblical way of looking at the world. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. These things are all meant to go together.
It struck me as I've been teaching Augustine City of God over the past several weeks here, just how much it seems that how much Greek theology, when I mean Greek theology, the theology or the cosmology of the Greek philosophers and so forth.
Spirit, reason, good, matter, bad.
And how that if you look at it, their creation theologies of what theology is never has God standing back at his creation pronouncing it good. There's always a higher, and it usually turns out to be the spirit or the intellectual or the absolute or the eternal, and the things which are changeable, mutable, the things which are created tend to be the things lower on the rank. Well, if you proceed far enough down that road, you end up with all kinds of distortions about what has priority, what's important to God. And I think rather than thinking of creation as something that God made and expects man to exercise dominion in it because he's delighted with it and he wants to redeem it, it's almost as we have an evacuationist sort of theology where God, the purpose of man is to escape, like the Gnostics, from creation itself.
Exactly.
To
I
return to
think
God.
that's a source of a lot of the problems.
Okay.
Exactly.